Hello everyone, and welcome to another Live at 5. I am Kevin Adkisson, curator with the Cranbrook Center for Collections and Research. And today I am joining you from Kingswood campus, the historic Kingswood School for Girls here at Cranbrook's Upper School. And I thought that we would spend some time today looking at these little paintings, which were done by our architect's daughter, Pipsan Saarinen Swanson. Now, just to give you a sense of where I am today, if you have visited Kingswood or if you attended the school, we are in the old faculty dining room. So it is up above the main Kingswood dining hall, and you can see down below where all of our students eat every day. Kingswood is, of course, one half of the co-educational Cranbrook Kingswood Upper School, but historically this was built for the girls' campus. Now, at the end of the room is the magnificent Festival of the May Queen hanging, produced by Studio Loja Saarinen and designed by Loja Saarinen and Aliel Saarinen. It was woven by the Swedish weavers working at Cranbrook Academy of Art, and on May 21st, 2022, we will be celebrating Studio Loja Saarinen and the Festival of the May Queen tapestry with our big fundraiser, the House Party. But before we get to House Party, on this Monday, March 21st, at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to have a lecture by Allison Klowski and Karen Swanson, the granddaughter of Pipsan Saarinen Swanson, all about Pipsan. And Pipsan, whose name was Eva-Lisa, but she went by Pipsan, and she actually went by Pixie to her intimates. She was the older of the two Saarinen children. So her little brother Eero was born in 1910. Pixie was born in 1905. And just like her brother, she studied drawing and design with her father and color with her mother, and she was really an outstanding artist in her own right. So I haven't talked about her nearly enough or nearly as much on Live at 5, and she is certainly not as well known as her more famous little brother or her father. But on Monday night, we're going to have a special lecture all about Pipsan. And as I was preparing for this Live at 5, I found a wonderful quote from Catherine Bromley, who is a neighbor to Cranbrook. And she said that Pipsan was a creative person to her fingertips, with a marvelous sense of color and line, which her mother has also. I don't want to give too much away from Allison from her lecture on Monday. Allison is working on her entire PhD thesis of just about Pipsan. And so I thought that we would focus on one aspect of Pipsan's contributions to Cranbrook. She went on to have a long career as a colorist. We might call her an interior decorator, but she was an interior designer for her father's architecture firm, along with her husband, Bob Swanson. And then when Swanson and Associates opened about 1947, Pipsan and Bob were a sort of architect and interior duo. And so they would design many schools. Just earlier today, I spoke at Seaholm High School, which is a Bob Swanson, Pipsan Saarinen Swanson collaboration. And on Monday, you'll learn all about sort of Pipsan's long career as a fashion designer, interior designer, rug designer, textile designer. But today, we will learn about these little hand-painted decorations that are on each of the shutters here in the upper dining room. And a lot of times, many books will say that these are stencils. They are not. They are hand-painted by Pipsan. And over the years, as the doors have been maintained, we're lucky that she used this pretty dense enamel paint, and they are in pretty amazing shape. Now, to give you a sense of where exactly all of these little botanic forms are, they are on these shutters, and the shutters are pretty great. I love the little balconies that you have. They absolutely don't meet modern fire code. It's pretty low. But if you think about young ladies, little girls looking down into the dining hall, it's the right height to sort of allow you to stand here like Juliet and look out. And so then the shutters all look back into the upper dining hall. And so you can see these from down below when the shutters are closed, or the best way to see them is up here. And then if you want to use this as a private dining room, you can actually close all of the shutters and you would have your own a pretty, if not sound private, a visually private classroom or dining area up here. And it's the classic Cranbrook locking hardware, so you can lock the shutters in place or fight with them to open them 100 years later in humidity. Each of the scenes that Pipsan has painted, they're sort of mostly about land plants, but we have occasional underwater moments. So here we have a starfish or a sea star with sea grass, and then our bubbles going up. And it's maybe hard to tell on Facebook Live, but the paint has a certain shimmer to it. And so it has a very beautiful reflective quality. And this dark coral color, almost red, almost pink, it is the color of the dishes that were used here at Kingswood. So it's a much darker tone than the color that the Saarinen family went with on the lighter coral, almost pink chairs designed by Eero Saarinen, the brother. But it very much complements the room that you're looking into. And so as we move around, we see different plants coming about. Here we have an aster plant. And then on the back side, on the next side, we have a European holly or a Christ thorn, which represents truth in Scandinavian cultures. And so all the plants are pretty highly abstracted and almost, the design term might be conventionalized in a way, where all of the plants fit within this sort of perfect oval or cartouche form, regardless of the plant's sort of how it grows. And I think that really adds a certain sort of beauty to them in that they're all this very regular depiction of the soil or the ground and then the plant coming up, and somehow always creating an oval, regardless of what plant it is. Here we see wonderful little fruits popping up, and as we get closer to it, you can tell that she's used the multiple dark shades. And if you've taken a Saarinen House tour with me or someone else from the Center for Collections and Research, you know that at Saarinen House, Pipsan used a lot of this sort of tone-on-tone work, where, for instance, all of the upstairs hallway doors are a certain shade of beige, and then the door surround is just a slightly darker shade, and then the door molding is a different color, a different tone, and the shoe molding is a different shade of that tone, and you end up with 8 colors used just to create a door surround. And she's doing the same thing here, and she really is a master of color, where it's a pretty flat graphic depiction of a plant, but she's used the very dark shade here and then the slightly browner tone right below it. Now, as we move to the next one, we see the lily of the valley. And the lily of the valley is the national flower of Finland. And so I imagine that as Pipsan was painting this one, she was thinking of her own Finnish roots and her own sort of connection back to the ancestral homeland. Lily of the valley also, in sort of art historical terms, signifies a return to happiness, which I think for the long oppressed Finns would have been very appropriate as their national flower after achieving nationhood in 1917. And you can see again the way that she's using different color and line to call out the different branches of the plant. Now next we get our only bird, not a plant at all. We have this pretty amazing peafowl or a peacock in all white, and peacocks are pretty important cross-culturally, from Chinese culture to Japanese culture, Finnish culture, American, English. Peacocks are always associated with different characteristics, and the white peacock particularly has long been depicted in art. A white peacock is actually simply a sort of genetic feature that turns them all white, and here Pipsan has made hers particularly dynamic with these sort of intersecting arc forms, and then a red eye, which I don't know if white peacocks have red eyes, if they're like other albino animals. Now from the peacock we turn the corner, and maybe you can see as I turn, the doors have been slightly refinished, so you end up with the original paint and then work right up to them. And again, each one of these is a slight variation. I'll talk about my favorites. Now, so this side of the dining hall, or the upper dining hall, looks out into the main dining hall. The end of the room, we're sort of up on almost like a ship's prow, looks into the sort of anteroom of the Rose lobby. So this is the main window overlooking the turnaround. Pretty stunning execution of the telescoping form motif that is the overriding design motif of the Kingswood architecture. And so these shutters, which are done in a almost tone-on-tone brown, so it's not that same red from the earlier shutters, it's a different one. And we see many different plants, including the alpine snowbell here. It kind of looks like a thistle. Maybe this is the alpine snowbell. My guide to the plants is not written in order, so I got a little confused as to which one is which. Needless to say, we see all different types of flowers growing around and around here, including the cotton thistle here, which has this sort of interesting inset curving triangles within the larger circle. And then again, the branches called out in 3 different colors. And then here we have the mountain fetterbush, or the mountain andromeda. These remind me of old doodles that I used to make in my notebook, and there is a certain whimsy to them. And again, these are not stencils, these are painted by her. I'm not sure if she was sitting up here hanging over the ledge of the Juliet balcony, or if she painted them when they were still independent shutters, but they were all hand-painted and not stenciled. If you recognize these from a tour of Saarinen House, these are copied at Saarinen House. So Pipsan Saarinen Swanson, she does the cornflower here, and then she does all the other flowers, and she had done something very similar just the year before at Saarinen House, possibly even the exact same time, 1931. And so each of the upstairs doors at Saarinen House had a little circular design hand-painted by Pipsan. But when Glenn Paulson became president of Cranbrook Academy of Art and moved into the house about 30 years later, he found it dingy and he asked for the house to be repainted. And doing an excellent job of repainting, Cranbrook sanded down all the original surfaces. And so the set of 8 that Pipsan made for Saarinen House were never photographed and were never, they did not survive. When the house was being restored in the 1990s, Greg Whitcop, who was leading the restoration and is now the director of the center, he took all the doors off the hinges and took them to Beaumont Hospital and scanned them through the X-ray, hoping that they had been simply overpainted. But in fact, someone had sanded off all the original designs. So when it came time to do the restoration, Greg simply copied these from Kingswood, knowing that they were very similar to what was at Saarinen House. Now, why were the Saarinen House ones never photographed? I'm just not sure. So these have this wonderful deep teal color, which picks up on the color scheme of the auditorium that they look out over. And you can see one of our boarding students is practicing piano down in the auditorium. Now, this room would have originally been outfitted with a ring of teal chairs with chromed bent tubular steel bases. And those chairs were designed by Eero Saarinen, like all the furniture in the school. So you would have had a ring of teal around the auditorium, and then you'll notice that Pipsan also does design stencils for all of the columns. And in between the aluminum leaf of the stencil are little teal details. And then if I turn the camera back even further, you can see that also all of the wood paneling is called out with these teal details. And so the teal is running around, contrasting with the darker oak. And so remember, the oak paneling in the dining hall side has been given a sort of waxed silver finish. Here it's given a more conventional golden finish. And then the teal is carried around on all of the edges of the wood paneling. Now, the aluminum leaf stencils, which are really catching the light quite beautifully here, continue all the way up to the ceiling, and you have these wonderfully funny little column capitals. I guess they would be pilaster capitals. A pilaster is a column engaged with the wall. And so the pilasters have the funny little silver leaf. And then we go into the center of the room, and the illuminated ceiling designed by S03E16 Saarinen is again complemented by aluminum stencils by Pipsan Saarinen Swanson. So you can see in between the circles those design motifs from Pipsan. Now Pipsan also designed the curtain. So on one end of this huge space we have the Festival of the May Queen, which was hand-woven at Cranbrook, designed by Aliel and Loya Saarinen. Here we have a commercially made theater curtain, fireproof. It's made of velvet and fabricoid, which was a sort of modern wonder material. This is a 2006 reproduction of the original, which is made of velvet and a contemporary fabricoid type project. Now we saw the starfish earlier. Here again is an underwater plant. You know it's underwater because of those bubbles bubbling up. And then as we make our way, we have another aquatic scene, which we have one peacock and two fish. I'm not actually sure what a starfish is, if it's a fish or a crustacean, what animal kingdom, what division it is, but here we have two fish. There's two starfish and a peacock. This one does seem a little sad, so I don't know who hurt you, but you've been sad for close to 100 years. And then on the other side, we see more flowers. Now, there is here, this is possibly a cactus form, a saguro. And then I missed our lily, our sagro lily, which is the state flower of Utah, because as the Mormons were headed out to Utah and they ran out of food, indigenous tribes helped them to discover which flowers they could eat. And so as they discovered that they could eat the sagro lily, that became then the state flower of Utah. Here we have a form that almost looks like little dresses, which Pipsan also taught fashion design at Cranbrook and made most of her own clothes as well. More little drops. These are about to pop out of the ground outside. I noticed all the daffodils were ready to pop out of the ground. Spring is almost here. And then you can tell there's a sort of like unified sense of detail she gives to all of them, but some are perhaps more exuberant because of the little bells hanging off the edge. And our last one, which does look like two Muppets hanging out, is pretty funny the way that the fruits are underneath it. I don't know, I see it as a palm tree with coconuts, which the ones that are listed that we know what she was doing look so abstracted from the original flower. I say, why can't if this is a palm tree? It is pretty fun, and I really want it on a t-shirt with those two friends. So obviously, if you have ever been up here for a meeting and all the shutters are closed, it kind of seems like just a very dull room. With all the shutters open, when you can see all of the beautiful stencil work, or all of the beautiful painted work, not stencils, as well. Oh, and we're back. I apologize for that lack of connection, but I was just wrapping up. Again, I wanted to invite everyone to the upcoming lecture this Monday, March 21st, with Allison Kowalski, who has written her PhD thesis about Pipsan Saarinen Swanson, will be joining us on Zoom, along with our special guest, Karen Swanson, Pipsan's granddaughter. And they're going to be talking in much more detail about the life and legacy and artistic output of Pipsan Saarinen Swanson. I hope that you enjoyed this